Right, let's take you to this now, where Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, has called for all minerals to be classified as critical resources, highlighting their strategic importance to economic growth, industrialisation and global supply chains. Speaking at this year's Mining Indaba in Cape Town, Mantashe said Africa must adopt a unified and coordinated approach to mineral development, arguing that the continent can no longer afford fragmented strategies in the exploitation of its vast mineral wealth. Let's take you live to SABC News reporter Katlego, Legodi, who's at the Mining Indaba in Cape Town and joins us live. A very good afternoon to you, Katlego. As we really just take stock of what Minister Mantashe had to say, one would imagine that discussions will go even further and focus on topics like investment and sustainability as some of the big talking points. What are the expectations?
A very good afternoon to you, Mpo, and to our viewers at home. Rightfully said, Minister Gwede Mantashe delivering an opening address here on day one of the Investing in African Mining Indaba, underway now at the Cape Town International Convention Center. This is where we have about 11,000 delegates, Mpo, attending here. A record number of those delegates coming from all walks of this continent and even others from outside of South Africa to form part of this important gathering. The reason why it's important is because we see it this year just rallying behind a theme, stronger together, progress through partnerships. And this is what Minister Gwede Mantashe put emphasis on in saying that on the continent we need not work in silos anymore going forward, that the rallying of these investments must really speak in uniform to ensure that there's progress in terms of reindustrialization, but also sustainable interventions in bettering the continent. We see him touching as well on South Africa and how we are faring, in the mineral sector where legislation is concerned, policy. He spoke about the Junior Exploration Fund that is being rolled out in the country right now. He also touched on a whole range of issues around issues of beneficiation, the role of women in mining, but at the same time, the issue of health and safety, as we see those fatalities often come through year in and year out. But interesting, is that we saw as well the Zambian President Hakainde deliver a keynote address, also touching on the reforms that are underway in Zambia in ensuring that they get the best out of the mineral sector. Here at home, we know that it contributes about 6 to 7.5% into the country's economy and a creator of jobs. But there have been some of those challenges that will need to be attended to through this particular conference. I'm going to take you further afield and look into the continent and reflect on what is happening in Zambia. We're joined now by Mwindwa Sakalima, who's coming through from Standard Bank, who'll just give us a sense of how things are faring there in Zambia. Your president delivering a keynote address here and touching on the reforms that are underway, the cadastre that is taking an impact in terms of the sector, the mineral sector there, but also saying that Zambia is turning the corner economically and we can attribute this to development in the mining sector. Welcome to the SABC Mwindwa. Let's reflect.
Thank you very much, Katlego, and happy to be here in Cape Town. I'll start by, acknowledging and thanking you for allowing me to be on this interview. But very quickly, to just give you reflections about this morning. We basically, would like to put it on record that the mining sector is very important to Zambia. It contributes about 15% of Zambia's GDP as recorded in the year 2024. And essentially what we look at is a sector that injects about 70% of the foreign exchange that we see in the country is actually coming out of mining and the ecosystem around mining. Over 60,000 jobs, direct and indirect, and that number can actually easily go upwards if you count other contractors. So a huge contributor in terms of what Zambia's economy is like. And essentially, coming back to our presidential speech, an excellent speech that the president gave, he started off by talking about the fact that critical minerals are key to the African continent and to Zambia itself. If you come to Zambia in terms of the mining sector, yes, we always talk about copper, but we've got other minerals, we've got cobalt, we've got nickel, and other criticals that you can actually look at as key in the sort of green energy drive that the world and the continent at large is looking at. So with that said, he then moved on to highlighting what has happened in the country. We as a country have seen inflation come down to single digits. As at end of January, we're in the single digits level. That number was up a few years ago, so that's number one. And then number two, we are then looking at GDP growth of 6+ percent or 6.4% in this year, 2026, and last year it was about 5.2, 5.4% thereabout. We're seeing growth come up, and part of this drive is definitely coming from the mining side and the investor confidence that has been created around the operating environment.
These are indeed exciting times, really, when you look at it, Mwendo, looking at the fact that the theme as well is centered around partnership, and especially the approach. We come out of the G20 as South Africa, there's a framework, and we saw the minister as well, Gwede Mantashe, gathering all the ministers from the continent to talk about critical minerals and their future going forward in turbocharging the economies on the continent. But let's talk about the role of the private sector. We find you here at Standard Bank as well. How do we see you fitting into the greater momentum that has been created from some of these events in actually a uniform approach to the minerals?
Right. We can talk about in terms of partnership and collaborations across the continent. Definitely, I think there's a number of things that are happening across the continent. But let me zero down on Zambia in terms of how we then see partnerships work. So we've worked with, for example, we had a drought that then created a deficit in terms of power. Now, if we're talking about stronger together prosperity through partnerships, we can demonstrate that as Standard Bank or Stanbic Bank in Zambia, in that we partnered with the government of the Republic of Zambia on a solar project of about, in terms of the amount that we put in as Standard Bank or Stanbic Bank Zambia, an amount of about $71.5 million for a solar project that helped reduce the deficit in Zambia by about 100 megawatts in terms of the power supply. That partnership with the government of the Republic of Zambia through an entity called KNBE, which is Kariba North Bank Extension, project, which is part of our utility company ZESCO. It's a subsidiary of ZESCO. Now, that is an example of private sector holding hands with the public sector, which is a utility company, and on the other side there's an off-taker, which is a mine. And that mine definitely gets power in a situation where there's a deficit that is being dealt. So the deficit, yes, came in, but we need, as private and public sectors need to come together and see how we then navigate some of these things. And that's why we actually have seen growth in the mining sector. You heard earlier that in 2024, the sector grew by about 12%. All right, and last year it grew by about 8%, and it ended in terms of metric tons of copper at about 890,000 metric tons, and that 1 million tons of copper is in sight in terms of the target that was set for this period, and definitely we are very positive that that number will be hit in the coming year with all the developments that we're seeing.
Awesome. Mwendo, really appreciate your time and everything of the best where the Mining Indaba is concerned. So the private sector also here, and you see them just really trying by all means to insert themselves in some of these meetings, and we'll see them also in the exhibition area as well, showcasing some of the work that they're doing to ensure that they move the mineral sector forward, but also the overarching theme is doing it together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. SABC News reporter Katlego Legodi at the Investing in Mining in Africa Mining Indaba in Cape Town. Certainly collaborations and partnership, some of the buzzwords at that Indaba.